Hello, everyone. We're going to get started really shortly, so if you can take a seat. I'll say a couple of things just very quickly, but ideal seating is more into the middle because we'd have two screens, so just keep that in mind. So feel free to get a little bit closer. So welcome everybody to CRRF's National Hybrid Panel and Presentation and Celebration of Canada's Islamic History Month. I want to let folks know who are tuning in online that there is simultaneous translation available, and you can access that by hitting the globe icon at the bottom right of your screen. And then anybody here in person who needs anything translated to French, we have headsets just out front. But before I say anything else, I'd like to turn it over to Elder Bob Watts, a senior fellow with First Peoples Group. On behalf of Mohammed Hashim, our CEO, and the entire CRRF organization, we request your guidance and well wishes to start us off in a good way. We are so grateful for you being here and the opportunity to collectively seek your guidance and learn from you. Thank you for blessing us and being here today.
Bonjour, Sego, Kanoshinwak, Megazi, Indigenous, Makwadodam. So my name is Kanoshinwak. It means tall pine. And I said, Makwadodam, that's my clan. I'm a Bear clan. And so I give you greetings. It's a real honor to be here this evening with all of you, especially with the event that's being held here. Celebrating Islamic History Month. So I've been asked to open this gathering in a good way. And I just want to acknowledge this tobacco that was given to me. In our tradition, we have a few medicines that are really sacred. And tobacco is one of those. Tobacco and sage, sweetgrass, and cedar. And it's not really a hierarchy, but they're used most commonly. And tobacco is an exchange gift. And we've had tobacco we've been growing in the Americas for thousands of years. Our tobacco is like really small compared to the commercial tobacco. And so it's a great honor to receive this tobacco. And I just want to acknowledge this beautiful gift. I'd like to say a few words. Some might say it's a prayer. We call it invocation. And that's to help bring our minds together. Normally, I would start with a smudge. I would be burning the sage and maybe offering it to all of you or offering it to the four directions and to the sky, to Creator, to the earth, and acknowledging all those directions. And all those people from all the many directions in the world that call this place home. But I was told I couldn't smudge in here because of fire regulations. We might set off the smoke detector, and then we'd all have a nice shower in here together. And so I said, well, we can deal with that. So I smudged the whole building. I went around the whole outside of the building and said, okay, if I can't smudge inside, I'm just going to smudge the whole building. And we do that to try to create a sacred space for us to be able to converse in and to dialogue in. And this smudge also talks about leaving those things that maybe are troubling you, to leave them at the door and to cleanse our mind so we can bring our very best thoughts forward with the work that we're going to do. And then we might pull that smoke up over our eyes to cleanse our eyes so we can see only the very best in each other. And then we'd pull some smoke up over our ears so that we try to hear the very best that people are saying and to focus on those good words and those good thoughts and to pull some up over our mouth. So we would speak those good words. We would speak that truth mixed with kindness so that it's done in a really good way. So it's received in the very best way. And we'd pull some smoke up over our hearts and over a place that we might think of in terms of where our spirit resides and ask that be cleansed too. so that we bring our very, very best selves forward for the work that we're going to do here together. So that's what we would have been doing. But you could imagine that we've just done that with each other. So we've created this really special environment for us to be able to operate within. And then we ask Creator for some help. And so that's what I'll do on behalf of all of us. I just say, bonjour, sego, Groshinwake Magazine, Indigenous Makwadodam, Shamnado, Sogoiniso, Creator, Chimigwech and Yawagoa, for this new day, another chance, a new beginning. We say Chimigwech for this place, for all the good work that's done in this place. And we say Chimigwech and Yawagoa for all of you for being here. And ask that Creator sends a special blessing to each and every one of you, that you may do the good work that Creator wants you to do in terms of your life's journey. And then we think about this time that we're in. We're just kind of at the end of the harvest season. And we're reminded that Mother Earth once again has provided for all of us. That all those kingdoms that are part of the earth, the mineral world, the plant world, the animal world, they've continued to do the job that they were assigned at the beginning of time. And Mother Earth has once again, through this beautiful harvest that we've just experienced, has taken care of us. And we think about our responsibility back to her, how we need to take care of Mother Earth, how we need to be good stewards, how we need to love her the way that she loves us, and to care for her the way that she cares for us. That's part of our responsibility as humankind. And then we look around us and we see all this beauty in across creation now. We say that Mother Earth has put on her most beautiful dress. You see those leaves have turned, they're orange and yellow and red. And we say she's put on her most beautiful dress. And she's dancing in celebration of the work that she's just accomplished. And pretty soon she's going to pull that big white blanket up over herself and get that rest that she so richly deserves. And so we say we offer our gratitude and our thanks to Mother Earth for taking care of us in such a beautiful way. And then we think about this time that we're in, also this time of pandemic. And we think about all those people that have sacrificed so much to take care of all of us. And we ask Creator to send a special blessing to each and every one of those people and to their families who have sacrificed for all of us. And we ask for that help for us, that this pandemic has put layers and layers of stress on top of those things that we already carry around with us. And we ask Creator for help and for guidance in terms of being able to put that stress aside and to be able to walk upright on that spiritual path that He's laid out for all of us in terms of the work that we're going to do. And so when we do our openings about gratitude. That's what we're asked to do as Anishinaabeg, as Haudenosaunee people. I'm Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg. And so when you hear these land acknowledgements that you'll hear later, this is my land too, that we're on. And like I say, we're benefiting from the thousands of years of love that have made this land so special that people from every country in the entire world have come here to live. And that we have an opportunity to create a really special place here. If we can look at each other with love and with unity and with dignity and respect, we're going to create a really special world here. We have work to do. This is a time of reconciliation that we're in, this era of reconciliation. And it's on every single one of us. Doesn't matter where you came from, how long you've been in Canada. This reconciliation journey is part of all of our lives. I think it should be part of the citizenship oath, actually, that you're going to commit yourself to work on reconciliation, because that's your civic duty, is to be part of this. And I'm not going to be here later on when you close your meeting off. Well, I want to say a couple other things. You know, when we greet each other in Mohawk, we would say Sego, which is our main greeting. It's a little bit longer word, but in short form. And then we say skanagoga. And skanagoga means, is the peace with you? Sometimes people think it means like, how are you doing? But it really means, is the peace with you? Skanagoga. Skanagoga. Is the peace with you? Skanagoga. Is the peace with you? Is it with all of you? Are you all carrying peace? Yeah. That's beautiful. That makes me really happy that you're all carrying peace. And so you would say back to me, it's gonna go. Or it's gonna go. It's gonna go. It's gonna go, ga? Oh, yeah. You guys are going to be speaking Mohawk before long. That's really good. So I won't be here when you close the meeting off. So I'll just say a few words about what I would normally say at a closing. Because we don't like close things down, and we don't usually say goodbye, because there's a certain finality to that. We usually would say, we'll see you again, or I hope you're safe until we see each other again. And then we would say that we've created this special fire as we've gathered here together. And we're just going to lower that fire, that council fire, until we can come back together again, and we'll raise that fire up again. So it gives us that light and that heat and that love to keep us safe. But it's going to just be lowered. And we can all think about that. So if we're facing tests and trials, we can just imagine this fire that's part of our circle here now. We can just imagine that and say, well, I'm going to put that, it's not of use to me. I'm going to put that in the fire. Ask the fire to take care of it for me. And so that's part of what you take away with you, is that fire, because you have a fire inside you. It's a fire up in the middle of the sky. It's the same fire. That's the way we think about it. We have that same fire, and we're related to that fire. So I'll just offer those words and those thoughts. And what we would say from a traveling point of view is travel safe. And we would hope that when you arrive home, that you find your home in good order, and that your loved ones are happy to see you, and that you're happy to see them, and that you bring that peace. You keep carrying that peace with you, and make that peace just grow and grow and grow. And we can all grow a beautiful peace here together by putting our own little pieces of peace together. So with that, I just say, Miigwech Nyawago, it's a real honor to be here to open this meeting. Miigwech Nyawago.
Thank you, Elder Bob Watts, for your opening. You have helped center and ground us and open our minds to reflection, and personally to my experience as a settler and how I connect with the natural world that has been so graciously cared for by Indigenous peoples. I realize there are many people here from different parts of Toronto and the GTA, but also virtually that are tuning in from all over Canada. So please take the opportunity to reflect on the lands that you have settled on. As a settler on Treaty 13 lands, I reflect on my journey here, my ancestors, the lands they settled on, and the immense privilege that has afforded me, but also to affirm the inherent treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples who have cared for and continue to care for these lands. Sharing also serves as a personal commitment to continue to work with Indigenous nations and peoples to combat racism and mobilize action on a path towards reconciliation. We all have a part to play, as Elder Bob Watts put it. So once again, thank you. My deepest thanks for your opening address and knowledge. I'm excited to gather here in person for this exciting conversation. Today, we will hear from Canadian Muslims who are using storytelling as a way to share their perspective and experiences, as well as to foster inclusion and counter hate and stereotypes. As the Director of Programs and Outreach, I would like to thank our team, particularly Saveka, Program Manager on our team, for her leadership in getting this event together. It's a huge priority for us to work with community and to create space for these important conversations. So please continue to connect with us and stay tuned for future conversations. So to get things started, I'd like to welcome Mohammed Hashim, our Executive Director, to say a few words. Mohammed, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Bonsoir, tout le monde. I thank you for coming to be here with us for this important discussion, but also the celebration of Islamic Heritage Month. I want to start by acknowledging that we're here gathered today on the traditional territories of many nations, particularly the Misagas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that we are here gathered on Treaty 13 land, signed with the Misagas of the Credit, for which Bob used to be the band manager, I think that's the right title, and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Misagas and Chippewa bands. Bob, thank you for, every time I hear you, honestly, like your words resonate such incredible truth. Bob was the first executive director of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He was the chief of staff to the national chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Perry Bellegarde. He was an associate deputy minister of the federal government. This man is like a walking wisdom. He's just, and he's also a grandfather to 7 grandchildren who play lacrosse quite fiercely. Thank you. I want to thank our team, Ohana, Saveka, Oswa, for putting this together. I want to thank our panelists, Rehana, our board member. And I just wanted to say a couple of words of reflecting around Islamic Heritage Month. You know, this is our 15th year anniversary for Islamic History Month. And you know what, when it was created, this was not the environment that it was created in. It was like, there was a time when, you know, we lived in the shadow of 9/11. Where like people looked at us with suspicion, with fear, with and that governments and people created an environment that many of us felt like we didn't belong. And in response to that, Islamic History Month was created. So it was an opportunity it was a call out to the community to say, please tell your stories. Please allow yourself to be, for you to tell your stories, not only for the rest of Canada to understand, so that you yourself can see yourselves in different ways. I think storytelling is an incredible art. There's an author named Thomas King, who's written about a book about truth about stories. And through that, there's you can really see how stories help shape not only how we see ourselves, each other, but how we see our relationship both to the land and to the people of this land. And I think that there's a constant evolution in terms of how we see those expectations moving. What we were expecting 15 years ago when Islamic History Month was created was a different reality to where we are now. I think that Muslims in Canada have done incredible contributions since then, and I continue to do so. But also that level of fear that many of us were seized by back then is a different type of fear. Right? Obviously, you see incidents like Quebec City, you see what happened in London, Ontario. You see those things that shake a community's resolve to even walk down the street and question whether it's safe or not. But yet, in many other aspects, I see incredible art that are renegotiating where we sit as a community. At a time, when this was created, people were afraid to talk about the dirty laundry. They were like, we don't want to talk about this, or we shouldn't talk about that, because there was a fear that people would latch onto that. But then now I see incredible amount of diversity within our community. People can talk about, everything from who they can and cannot love to who wears or doesn't wear or should wear or have the right to wear whatever they want, versus it being imposed by some men. And I think that level of confidence that exists now is something that's an incredible accomplishment of the community, but also it's putting a foot down and saying we belong here. And I think that today, through these stories, what we'll hear is new ways of planting those feet. To say that, whatever ships we came on may have been burnt and gone, but this is the land that we belong on and the land to which we're responsible for. And through that, I want to just make sure we talk a little bit about the foundation, because I've been told to talk about the foundation. So the CRRF is a federal crown corporation. Really proud of the team that we have, honestly, that have done incredible amounts of work here. This year alone, we gave $3.6 million out in grants, which is a huge accomplishment. We're pushing communities to do incredibly more innovative things. We've created a national task force on hate crimes that I co-chair with the RCMP, where we're creating national standards for policing to deal with hate locally in their communities. We're working on a variety of public policy issues, including, like supporting those who have been wrongfully convicted through the criminal justice system. We now have, when I first started here, there was 5 people here. Now there's 25 people that work for the CRRF in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax, Calgary. We're growing across this country, and it's all because of the incredible amount of work that our staff are doing over here. We're advocating for victims. We're looking to see how we can get financial supports for victims who are victims of hate that has never really been available to them before. And we're working with the federal government currently on a number of different really important issues. One is Canada's anti-racism strategy, which is being renewed currently. There's a national action plan on combating hate. That's happening. And very importantly, the online safety bill. That should be coming, because we know online hate is an incredibly growing problem. It seems like we're just drinking out of a fire hose most days. And the problem is not, it's increasing a level of polarization, which is increasing a level of, in my honest opinion, audacity and confidence of those who want to be hateful in a place of impunity, because there's no check back against that. And I think that this government needs to figure out a way to push back against that. Almost 70% of people who are under 30 have experienced online hate. Those who are racialized and are women have experienced more than that. So young women are the #1 target of online hate. And last year we partnered with the YWCA to create a video which tells a story of a young woman named Noor out in Vancouver. And I'll just ask you to watch this video here or there. And I think it'll magically play. Please be mindful of the content. It might be slightly disturbing.
My name is Noor Fadel. I'm 21 years old. Actually, my birthday is literally in like 3 days, so I'll be 22 soon. I was born and raised in Canada, and my parents are originally from Iraq. The next day, I was like, why am I trying to forget about this? I can't forget about it. And so I posted on my Facebook, and I explained what happened. And while I was there, my sister's like, holy Noor, your post is going viral.
You want me to read them out loud?
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, making me say bad things.
Wow. I really don't want to say these things. They're so horrible.
And I read through every single one of those messages that I got.
Take that bed sheet off of your head and you will not be bullied.
Maybe she should have stayed in her own country. Ugh.
Attention-seeking slut.
Fuck you, Jihadi Jane. Oof.
Round them all up, then we don't worry about them killing us.
Did you post this from an Iranian prison?
How horrible that would make her feel.
Honestly, the effect that those comments had on me, even though it's like been 3 years, they're always gonna be there. The problem with social media and online is that anything that goes on there will always be there.
It's not okay.
Nobody should be hearing things like this.
It's tiring. You're carrying this entire thing on your shoulders, this weight of this entire really important discussion.
Hate on the internet like that should not be allowed.
Well, you can't just say, stay off the internet, stay off TV. Like, this is part of what it is to be a person in this world now, and it's something we need to be able to seek justice for.
If nothing is really done about it, it can really take a huge toll on someone's mental health.
Like, I want to be someone who inspires. I don't want somebody to just look at me and go, Wasn't that girl that got, attacked on the SkyTrain?
We definitely should do more to prevent the spread of online hate.
Yes, I believe we need to do more to prevent online hate in Canada.
It's hard to absorb that, eh? We're thankful to Noor, who bravely shared her story, and for our partnership with the YWCA for helping put a series of these videos together. We've had 4 of them, particularly around showing how young women are impacted by online hate, because we want strong legislation. We want the government to act on this. This is a priority for everybody that we believe needs to be dealt with. So tonight, it's not just about pain, it's about hope. And we're hoping to have the conversation as both a celebration, but also how do we move forward? So I want to just invite Rehana Patel, who serves as a board member at the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. She was recently appointed by the Governor General of Canada to serve on our board of directors, and it currently works as the Director of Communications and Government Relations at the international NGO Islamic Relief Canada. She's also a former BBC News journalist. Please help me welcome Rehana to the stage. Thank you, Rehana.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. How exciting is it to be back in person? Very, very quiet audience today. So I'm really excited to be here. For one, we have an amazing group of panelists, but also, as a communications person, as a former journalist, I love storytelling and I love telling stories and hearing them. And I think it's so powerful in getting messages and building bridges and encouraging community cohesion. We have an amazing group of panelists, which I'm going to introduce to you in a few minutes. But I just want to say, thank you for everyone for putting this event together. And again, so exciting to be back here in person. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask your help in welcoming the panelists to the stage. And as you welcome them, I'm going to ask them to come have a seat and we will begin our conversation. Okay, come on, round of applause. You guys are really, really quiet. All right. Oh, am I echoing? No, that's great. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Who's ready to get started? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give introductions to all of our panelists, and then we're going to hear brief presentations from them, and then we're going to have a little discussion, and then open it up for some Q&As from all of you. So if you have any questions as they're speaking, please make a note of them, and we'll explain that process as we go along. So I'll start off by introducing Anbar Iman, which is right there, in the middle. Anbar is a professor of law and history and Canada Research Chair in Islamic Law and History at the University of Toronto in its Faculty of Law and Department of History. He's also the director of the university's Institute of Islamic Studies. Thank you, Anbar, for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Great. I'm going to move on to Moska Roque, I'm saying that correctly, is a first-year PhD student at the University of Toronto Faculty of Information. A former refugee, she's been actively involved in the Afghan-Canadian Diaspora Committee for many years. Moska has been the archivist for the Muslims in Canada Archives at the University of Toronto since its founding in 2019. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then moving on to Furkan, who's on my left there. Furkan is a writer from Toronto. Her work has appeared in Room Magazine, This, Maisonneuve, Toronto Life, and The Local, among others. She's interested in all things popular, culture, diaspora, kinship, and abolition. She's a former journalism fellow at The Local, and her debut collection of poetry and prose, A Small Homecoming, was published by Party Trick Press last year. Her latest artistic work includes an episode of Dreams in Bantalabak, streaming now on CBC Gem. She is currently the culture editor for Mint magazine and is studying at the University of Toronto. Oh, Welcome. And finally, Mohammed Shaheen, who's sitting right next to me, founded the Silk Road Institute in 2013. It is an organization dedicated to creating captivating and professional artistic and cultural programming that strengthens Muslim representation, visibility, and contributions within the cultural mosaic. Can I have one more round of applause for our panelists? Great. All-star lineup. And to kick it off, we are going to start with Anwar and Muska, who's going to tell us something about the MICA project. Great.
Yes. So we're going to present together, if that's all right. We're both at the Institute of Islamic Studies, which is the home for MICA. And for me, I simply want to suggest a couple ideas, and I'm going to turn it over to Muska. Is the Muslims in Canada Archive is really about storytelling potential, not storytelling. If you think of any story that you can remember, can recall, a story will have characters, a story will have context, some background, before you ever get to the plot structure itself. What MICA is an institution to house the potential for storytelling. And that's where Muska's vision of the Institute really has taken shape. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Amber. Can you hear me? Okay. Amber talked a little bit about the potentiality of stories. And I think that's really where MICA comes in when it comes to storytelling about Muslims in Canada. So I want to ask you all to kind of imagine your home. I'm going to try to use an analogy for you to sort of really grasp where MICA comes into the picture here. So if you, in your homes, you likely have, or at least I do, or majority of us do have, some box that's maybe sitting underneath your bed, or some drawer that's like never opened. And in that box, you likely have mementos of and souvenirs of memories and things you've done in the past, travels, places you've been. And all of these are very priceless and sentimental memories that you keep with you because you want to remember certain moments of your life. So if you think about MICA as the Muslims in Canada Archive, I try to imagine it as this collective Canadian Muslim memento box. We're all here trying to add and contribute into this box to create a larger vision. So the more mementos or collection of your personal records that we all add collectively to the MICA memento box or archive, the more visible Canadian Muslim lived experiences and histories become, and the stronger our stories and awareness of the contributions of Canadian Muslims, the stronger that awareness becomes. And this helps us fight skewed or narratives that are discriminatory or stereotypical or harmful to the Canadian Muslim narrative. So if you can imagine, each individual's collections in MICA has the potential to tell so many different stories. But an archive like MICA isn't here necessarily to tell those stories. Instead, we're here to be the safekeeping place or the memento box or the repository of primary sources. And each primary source having its own sort of potential to reveal infinite stories about Muslims, depending on what curiosities or questions you ask of the archive. So, for example, and we also have some photos of some of the archival items on the screens here as well. So, for example, if someone in the future were interested in learning about the kinds of places Muslims enjoy traveling, and they want to look at travel photographs, to satisfy that curiosity, they can come to MICA, ask us about travel photographs, and what we'd be able to do is bring out the different collections or memento boxes of each individual, and you'll be able to see all the travel photographs from different memento boxes or collections. So in that way, Micah has this infinite potential to tell so many stories, but those stories can only be told if you come, and you are obviously all very much invited to come and take a look at everybody's mental box, take a look at everybody's collections. Micah is like, if you can imagine, excitedly sort of bubbling with all this potential. And, you know, we always, again, like I said, we invite everyone to come and have your curiosities tickled and have your questions answered and engage with those materials, learn more about Muslims. And you know, Micah becomes this jumping off point, this beginning, this platform of these primary sources to tell more and more stories. I think that's so these photographs are some of the archival items that we've currently had donated. So for example, there's some newspapers here that were donated by a donor. We have on the right and on the left, there's these newsletters from, I think they're the 80s or 90s. I think the Al Bashir, and then the imprint on the right. We also have lots of photographs. We have a donor that was really interested in food. I know this month is about is the Islamic heritage theme. This month is food. So we have maybe an earlier slide. I'm not. Yeah, so we have somebody who donated a ton of like flyers and of different restaurants or halal restaurants around the GTA. Over the years, she had collected all of these flyers, and they're very old. Some of them are very old, and so we have those, and it just reveals a lot about. If you can think about it, and if you can imagine, it reveals a lot about a single individual. This person very, very much a foodie and very much enjoys going to different places and trying halal food at different restaurants. So our job is to collect these archival materials, organize them, and then make them available for infinite potential storytelling possibilities. And
so I'll bring this to a conclusion. What's great about Micah and what we enjoy about Micah is also the hard part about Micah. It's detailed. It's particular. What we're building is not so much a story, but an institution. Like all institutions, it's not really sexy to build on. Stories are so much cooler, and you got characters. Building an institution means we have to have a reading room and security and boxes and supplies, digital platforms, servers, and we're doing all of that. Our job is to create the infrastructure so that you can come to us, to the reading room, and access our materials, to the digital platform and view the thumbnails, to, if you're a historian, you're a movie maker, you're a poet, you're a writer, you're a theater guy, you're creating theatrical productions, and you want content to support that, inspiration to support that. That's our role, is to give you the chance to tell your story in your words and make it easy and as easily accessible for you as possible. And that's our hope. We're really grateful to the University of Toronto for making a home for Micah, to the Social Science Humanities Research Council for giving us a seed grant, and most recently the federal government for including us in their last budget in 2022 with an endowment to make us permanent. And so our job is to fulfill our mission to support all of Canada, not just Ontario, Quebec, and Newfoundland, which we're starting in, but every province and territory in the country, and create a made in Canada product that we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's an amazing project that you both are doing. I love the analogy in the beginning about that momentum jar or a box. I think like almost everyone has one. So that's great. And you mentioned anyone can come to the So please go online. Find them and please go.
Yeah, our website is right.
Perfect. Please go check it out. It's a great initiative. Okay, we're going to move on to our next panelist. Furkan, over to you.
These chairs are so comfy.
I know.
Don't want to leave. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, that's beautiful. You don't really hear that a lot elsewhere. As a writer, a poet, and a student in academia, I am fascinated by kinship and community, how people create an identity for themselves with the help of people around them, and how this happens under forces of colonialism and capitalism, how people persevere in developing a sense of self and surrounding themselves with that sense, regardless of the challenges that they face. I have written about this subject, both generally and specifically about my own community and the political power of those communities. One thing that I love about community is inside jokes, small, intimate exchanges, letters, cultural artifacts, and moments that we share. I love seeing them pop up in literature of all forms, online, in essays, books, and more. But throughout my work, I have grappled with how to write about communities, the ethics of writing about other communities as well as your own. So much of the time, writing about the people you come from when you're writing for others, when you know that your readers are outside of your community, often feels like it always requires an explanation. This feeling of needing to explain yourself can be understood as a consequence of a profoundly insidious and quiet form of racism and bigotry that demands that one prove that they are human and thus worthy of dignity and respect. When so much mainstream media presents marginalized communities, particularly Muslims, as other, to be feared and to even be destroyed, it can be incredibly seductive to write or create art that is interested in saying that you are human, that you do belong, to beg and to plead with an imagined and usually white audience to see you. But I like to complicate this a little because I hope from the position that we are in and that we do not need to prove it. I often think of the words of one of my favorite writers, Toni Morrison, where she said that the function, the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says that you have no language and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says that your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists work on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge it up. Somebody says that you have no kingdom, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. In many pieces of my work, in my chapbook and in my project for the CBC, I worked on writing not just what I wanted to read, which I often find helps when attempting to put together a collection, but also to remedy what we are losing when we succumb to the need to explain ourselves. I decided some time ago that I was not interested in writing work that humanizes my community or explains or proves anything. Instead, I am concerned with the beauty of what we have in common and what can be learned when discovering our complex differences. And really, from an Islamic perspective, we understand that no other person has a right over another and that no one can grant life, the very essence of humanity and dignity, except Allah. I am already human. You are already human. Muslims, Black people, women, to borrow a phrase from Pakistani-Canadian writer Samra Habib, have always been here. And the stories we have to share about migration, about love, grief, triumph, joy, and family are imbued with the same intrinsic value that we are. So with that, I'd like to share my project with the CBC with you all.
Black girlhood is a masterclass in dying. If my obituary read like the contents of my purse, you'd ask how I didn't die sooner. Every gift is a warning and every heirloom an instruction manual. Handbags or safety deposit boxes. extra cash and escape plans. As a Black girl, every day can be a rainy day. One day the heavy water might drown me, and the handbag, my keeper of secrets, will slip open. Here lies a hand-me-down bottle of oud. Outpours every hubba, their heavy aroma covering me like colorful chiffon. Old wives' tales. Keep your bag on your lap. Never let it touch the ground. Never show the inside of its mouth. This too, a master class in dying. Expensive mascara. I sweep across each eye just like my mother. I tried to see the way she did. Trusting, observing, quiet. Brown compact powder. Quarters, dimes, the number of somebody's cousin's father's half-sibling's sick auntie's tailor, written on the back of a receipt. Loose petals. From flowers with unpronounceable names, a perfect match to my unpronounceable name. Keys to open my locker, my mailbox, my home, to hold between my knuckles while walking at night. A gold bracelet. I was supposed to trade it for a ring or for handcuffs. Scattered pill bottles for the illnesses I was allowed to name, sage and sacred oils for the ones I could not. You would think that in my death I could let go, leave behind the burden of my baggage. After everything, I am holding all of it, even beyond the grave. Black girlhood is an exercise in preparing for your passing, even the parts you think are alive.
Hi, my name is Furqan Mohammed. I am 19 years old and I am a writer and a poet. So I think regardless of your gender or gender identity, I think everybody has had a moment in their life or really an attachment to an object that sort of teaches them about who they are and how they're supposed to navigate the world. And that can come from a parent or a friend or a mentor. So I learned that a handbag is not just a fashion accessory, it's also an emergency bag, it's a go bag. It's a bag that carries often a lot of responsibility, and so that's why it's a marker of going from girlhood to womanhood and becoming a woman and really understanding your femininity. Every bag is unique, but at the same time there's also a certain standard of things that you should always have as a girl, not just for yourself, but in case someone else needs it as well. That's also a big part of being a woman, is being prepared to help yourself, but also being prepared to help people around you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Furqan. That was really, oh, perfect. Thank you. That was beautiful and very brave. Thank you for sharing that. We'll come back because we have some questions, but I'm going to now go to our final panelist. Mohammed, over to you.
Okay, sounds good. Perfect. So thank you to the organizers for having us all here today for this gathering. And it's great to see everybody in person. We haven't had a lot of opportunity in the last few years. I wanted to start today by going back in time a little bit. We recently put together a podcast and I was asked as part, our host Tendesai was interviewing us. Tendesai Cromwell was interviewing me as part of the podcast for one of the kind of the episodes, give an indication of why we put it together, and was asking about the reasons related to the work that we do and how we came about to create the Silk Road Institute. So on that trip up through memory lane, I was thinking about those early years, and back then, around 2012, I'd been doing my PhD for multiple years at that time, and I was living in Quebec. I lived in Montreal for some time, and I would still be living in Montreal for some time after those years. And if you're familiar with Quebec, there's been a lot of conversation over the past decade or two around several communities, around secularism, around reasonable accommodation. I attended one of the sessions of the Bouchard-Taylor Commission when it arrived in Montreal in 2008. Of course, we had just come out of an election in 2012 where the Charter of Secularism was proposed by the PQ. But something was missing from all that. Muslims and Muslim communities were discussed from the perspective of policy. They were discussed from the perspective of laws. But we never discussed Muslim communities as, as individuals, as who they were. And a bunch of us came together and thought, well, the way to do that really is to tell stories, is to talk about these Muslim communities and create spaces for them to talk about themselves, to express themselves through art. So we created the Silk Road Institute in 2013 to create that kind of space to celebrate Muslim identities, for individuals to co-create, to share. And since then, we've, started from our early years with music, musical events in cafes that would open their doors to us, to sitting also in those same cafes and hosting authors and talking about the themes and people sharing their thoughts with the authors. And eventually, a few years later, in 2015, we said we wanted to have an impact. We wanted to make sure that we're telling those stories, but we also wanted to make sure that we are reaching others outside those who are already invested in those stories. So we set out in 2016 to create a theater program. And the idea was not to create a program or essentially to host theater stories where people would come to watch it because it's Muslim stories, but to create great theater that told Muslim stories. So you would come and experience great theater, but you'd come out having learned something else. And that's truly there are, of course, a lot of ways for expression, but we took the path of saying that, well, we want to bring in those who aren't already invested in this. They're coming just to experience great art, and now they've just walked away having a whole new, I'll say, outlook with regards to the specific community. So in 2017, we started putting together I'll actually say 2016, after many rejected grants, we eventually had some organizations and some individuals come together and believe in what we were trying to do. And we put together our first production. The center two images there are from our first production, The Domestic Crusaders, which we hosted in Montreal. And that led to our second production in 2018, which are the two side pictures there, Spun, which we by then had, we produced and hosted in one of Montreal's most established theater spaces, Centre Theater, in the heart of the Old Port. And this is where we started feeling that, there was immense impact of the work that we were doing. And in putting these stories, we wanted to think about what does make a Muslim story. Well, for one, we knew that our characters had to be flawed in a sense, because life is flawed. There is no such thing as ideal characters. I think there's this, I think a lot of us have experienced this, and I'm going to be sharing a clip later also for one of our podcast guests who spoke about this. But this idea that, if we're talking about Muslims, we have to talk about them in this absolutely positive light. Well, it's a single-dimensional or two-dimensional character that nobody would relate to. So we wanted to create these truly, authentic stories. And also we want to create great theater. So after 2019, we said, well, okay, now we really need to create stories in Canada, because our first two productions, one of them was from the USA and one of them was from the UK. So I think the next slide I have up there will speak to the fact that we went out and commissioned an actual script. So this would be the first time, I think, that, first of all, I think, we may be the only Muslim Canadian theater company in North America. But also we went out to commission a script that's written in Canada. So we're working currently with Uzma Jalaluddin since 2020 to put together our latest script for 2013. And we're going to be working with LA-based director Meher Kaur, who you see the photo with. And our next production will be opening in 2023, March 2023 in Centre Theater. But of course, when we were putting together this production, the pandemic hit. Sorry, when we commissioned the script, the pandemic hit, and suddenly theater stopped. How we were going to get out our message. So then we turned to another passion of ours, which was podcasting. And we always wanted to create a podcast, and now seemed like the opportune moment to do so. So we applied for a grant, and Canada Council for the Arts, as part of their Digital Now grants for the pandemic, gave us a grant to create this podcast chronicling Muslim contributions to the arts in Canada. And we've been working over the past 8 months to do so. And coincidentally, when I got this invitation, I was like, oh, wow, it's happening on the same day we're launching. So earlier today, we launched the podcast with the first episode. And what we wanted to do was to create something, again, that spoke to the diversity of Muslim communities. So we were faced with questions in putting this together. How do you describe a community of artists, of Muslim artists? We tried going the narrative route of actually trying to weave a thread through it all, through all the interviews, but we couldn't, it was just too hard. And we ultimately, for now, settled on letting each artist speak for themselves. And what was our job to make sure that we had as diverse of expressions and artists there to speak to the Muslim experience, which we did, and we hope that that will come through in the episodes coming forward. I feel I'm going too long, so I'm going to try and cut it short. So I'll leave you with this. Here's the, you might see there a QR code, which means that you can now subscribe to this podcast if you want to take that image right from the screen. But I will leave you with this clip from our very first episode, Omar Laqad, Gilder Prize winner, who talks about the representations of Muslim identities. Thank you.
There is a temptation to individually try to counteract what is systemic. You know, so at a systemic level, my people have been portrayed this way. Therefore, I am going to create Muslim characters who are pure as the driven snow. And individually, I'm going to counteract all that has been done, all the damage that has been done systemically. And that's a horrible idea, because those characters end up being flat. They end up having no flavor to them at all. None of us are pure as the driven snow. And so I very deliberately am working on flawed characters. The good guys and the bad guys in my stories are not exclusively good or bad. And it's a very active thing on my part to try and make them flawed in interesting ways. Because I think the alternative is to try to get into a situation that you're never going to win. And I think people who are in the dominant culture never think of this sort of thing.
That's right.
Whereas, you know, it's sort of on your mind all of the time. Not only the idea of making sure your characters are good enough to counteract all the damage that has been done, but also the sense of what I tend to call Atlas syndrome, which is this idea of, okay, I'm writing about Muslims. Maybe I'm one of the 2 or 3 books about Muslims that my publisher will put out this year, as opposed to, 100 books about middle-aged New England couples going through the ennui of a failing marriage or whatever it is. And so because it's such a limited window, I better describe every facet of being Muslim, every aspect of it, and that again is horrible. Like you won't do it. You won't do it well. It'll just be a mess. And so I'm trying my best at all times to not give in to those kinds of temptations. And the result is that when I describe evil characters, I hope that they're not cartoonishly evil, that they are evil in a way that takes advantage of what society has allowed to be considered normal.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Get a round of applause. So I'm going to ask everyone to do one thing. So the podcast was launched this morning. There is the QR code. I know some of you have commutes going home. You're either driving, taking the subway, plug it into your phone and start listening to it, even if it's just for a few minutes. Can everyone do that? Or at least some of you? Yeah? All right. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to have a little quick discussion. I have a few questions. I'm going to start with Furkan. Your presentation was amazing. I really enjoyed it. Very brave. Can you tell us a little bit, you touched on it a little bit, but maybe tell us a little bit about what drives you, particularly as a Canadian Muslim of Somalian descent to, do the work that you're doing, sharing your stories, and being innovative and creative?
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Well, for starters, I'm very lucky because there is a rich storytelling tradition within the Somali culture. So I'm not stepping into something new, I'm not reinventing the wheel. There's also like just incredible Somali women right now who are doing incredible storytelling as well. I think about Warsan Shire's work a lot. The women over at the Digital Sisterhood, I think they're incredible. So I think part of what drives me is wanting to be a part of that tradition and also stepping into something that I know I will be not only welcomed in, but encouraged in. It's a lot easier to do something when you'll have somewhere to land, even if it doesn't work out as well, or knowing that you'll be able to learn from it regardless, because I'm surrounded by so many incredible Somali storytellers as well as Muslim storytellers in general. I also think that writing in any medium just allows me to make sense of things, regardless of what the subject matter is. There's that really beautiful James Baldwin quote where he says, you think you're the first person to go through something and then you read. And so I think part of writing allows me to sort of process things, and also reading other people's work as well as what drives me and encourages me to keep going.
No, that's great. And what would you say would be one of your challenges, or like one of the barriers that you face or you come across?
Oh, I think the podcast said it really beautifully, is that one challenge as a Muslim writer is like to get every single nuance of like Muslim life and identity in your piece, because that people who are not Muslim are going to read it, especially if you're publishing on a larger platform. Then you're trying to like say something and then you're like, oh, maybe I won't put that in there because these people won't know what that means. And then that's problematic. Or you want to put something out there so you can flag to like other Muslims that you're like a good Muslim, like you're there. So yeah, I think one of the challenges is like this over editing, like the editorializing, I think can sometimes be it, and also that fear of getting something wrong. You can't get your own life wrong, but there's that fear that you will, because you think that you're the first to do something, or you feel like you're alone in that, when really you're not. So I think that sometimes I have to ignore the voice in the back of my head that wants to censor or editorialize when writing.
Well, thank you for doing that. I'm sure everyone's inspired by what they heard in story. Okay, we'll come back to you, but I'm going to move on now to Anvar. So the Micah project was great. You talked a lot about what you're doing. How, maybe tell us a little bit about how is it countering, some of the hateful narratives that we're seeing, throughout the recent years